Once upon a time, in a small village tucked away from the bustling cities, there lived a young girl named Amara. She was the only daughter of Nia and Olamide, a hard-working couple who, like many in their village, struggled to make ends meet. Nia and Olamide had always dreamed of a better life for their daughter, hoping one day she would escape the hardships they faced. But as the years went by, their dreams slowly faded into the harsh realities of poverty. Amara was a bright, beautiful girl, full of life and hope. She had a heart of gold, always helping those in need, and her laughter was infectious. But the same poverty that had shadowed her parents' lives also threatened to consume hers. The village was known for its economic hardships, and with every passing day, Nia and Olamide found themselves sinking deeper into debt. They had borrowed from the wrong people, greedy, heartless lenders who cared little for the well being of others. One fateful day, after another fruitless attempt to pay off their debts, Nia and Olamide received a visit from a man who would change their lives forever. This man, Billionaire Adebayo, was known throughout the land for his wealth and power. His reputation was that of a man who could buy anything, from the rarest gems to the most exotic animals. He had everything a person could desire, except one thing: love. Billionaire Adebayo had heard whispers about the struggling couple and their beautiful daughter. He wasn't known for kindness, but for his unyielding business mind. He was willing to strike a deal with Nia and Olamide. He offered them a chance to settle their debts, to wipe the slate clean, but at a heavy price. Adebayo made them a proposition. Give me your daughter, Amara. She will serve as a maid in my mansion, and I will pay off your debts. I will ensure you never have to worry again. Nia and Olamide were stunned. The idea of giving up their daughter was unthinkable, but the weight of their debts pressed heavily on their hearts. Amara, who had overheard the conversation, stood in the doorway, her face pale with fear. Her parents' eyes were filled with sorrow, knowing they were about to make a decision that would change their lives forever. But the alternative, watching their family be torn apart, was too much to bear. Please forgive us, Amara, her mother whispered, tears in her eyes. We have no choice. The decision was made, and Amara, with a heavy heart, was sent to live with Adebayo in his grand mansion. She was no longer the carefree, hopeful girl she once was. She had become a pawn in her parents' desperate attempt to save themselves. Adebayo's mansion was nothing like Amara had imagined. It was grand, yes, but it was also cold, lonely, and filled with people who cared only about wealth and power. She was given a small room in the servants' quarters, far away from the luxurious life that Adebayo led. Her daily tasks were endless: cleaning, cooking, and attending to the billionaire's every whim. She worked from dawn until dusk, with little rest, and the mansion's opulence only highlighted how far she had fallen from the life she once dreamed of. Adebayo, however, paid her little attention. He had no interest in her beyond the fact that she was fulfilling a bargain, a mere servant. Yet, as time passed, something began to shift. Amara, with her quiet grace and unwavering work ethic, began to capture the attention of those around her. She never complained, even though every task seemed impossible. Her kindness and strength of character made her more than just a maid in the eyes of the other servants. They admired her resilience, and secretly they whispered to one another about how different she was from the other women Adebayo had employed over the years. But Amara wasn't interested in the admiration of the other servants. Her heart ached every day for her parents, who had sold her for their own safety. She thought about them constantly, wishing she could go back home. And yet, as time went on, something else began to stir within her, a feeling she couldn't deny. The more she worked, the more she started to notice small things about Adebayo. The way he would sit alone in his study late at night, the sadness that flickered in his eyes when he thought no one was watching, the soft sighs that escaped his lips when he thought about the past. Adebayo, it seemed, wasn't the heartless billionaire he appeared to be. One evening, after finishing her chores, Amara found herself in the garden. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with the colors of the setting sun. She leaned against the stone wall, lost in her thoughts. The soft rustling of leaves made her feel for a moment as if she were back home, back in the warmth of her village. It was then that Adebayo appeared. Amara, he said, his voice unexpectedly gentle. You work hard. I've noticed. Most of the people I employ don't do as well as you. Amara turned to face him, surprised by his words. She wasn't used to the billionaire speaking to her directly, and certainly not in such a kind tone. I only do my job, sir, she replied quietly. Adebayo looked at her for a long moment, as if searching for something within her. You remind me of someone, he said, more to himself than to her. Someone I used to know before all of this. Amara, curious, tilted her head. Who was that? The billionaire hesitated for a moment, his eyes flicking to the ground. A woman I loved, he said, his voice tinged with sorrow. She was kind, like you, but I lost her to my own mistakes. For a moment, there was silence between them. Amara felt a pang of sympathy for the man before her, the man who had so much but still carried the weight of his past. I'm sorry, she said softly. Adebayo gave a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. You're different from the others, Amara. There's something about you that makes me see the world in a different light. But don't get me wrong, he added quickly, as if trying to distance himself from the vulnerability he had just shown. I don't need anyone's pity. Amara nodded, not knowing what to say. She was still processing the fact that the man who had bought her was now sharing his pain with her. For the first time since arriving at the mansion, she saw Adebayo not as a powerful billionaire, but as a man with his own struggles, his own sorrow. As days turned into weeks, Amara's routine remained the same. She worked tirelessly, yet something had changed, though she was still a maid in Adebayo's mansion. Her relationship with him had shifted. Their interactions, while brief, had begun to carry a new weight. Each time he passed her in the halls or spoke to her in the garden, there was a strange connection, an unspoken understanding. Amara couldn't explain it, but she felt it deep within her. Adebayo, for his part, seemed conflicted. He had begun to notice the small things that made Amara different from the others. Her kindness, her quiet strength, and the way she moved through the mansion with grace and dignity. She was no longer just a maid. She had become a symbol of something he had longed for, something real, something pure. And yet, despite his growing feelings for her, Adebayo kept his distance. He was a man who had learned the hard way to protect his heart. Love had never served him well in the past, and he wasn't sure if he could risk it again, especially with someone like Amara, who had been thrust into this world of wealth and power against her will. Amara, too, wrestled with her own feelings. She had never expected to feel anything for the man who had taken her from her family. But as the weeks went by, she began to see him not just as a cold, calculating billionaire, but as a man who had been broken by his own choices. The glimpses of vulnerability he showed when he spoke about his past stirred something within her. She saw in him a kind of loneliness, a pain that mirrored her own. And in some strange way, she began to feel pity for him. Yet, Amara remained cautious. She was a prisoner in his mansion, a servant bound by the weight of her parents' debts. She couldn't afford to let herself become entangled in a relationship with someone like Adebayo. Her heart, though, had other plans. Every time they spoke, she found herself drawn to him in a way she couldn't explain. His presence, though often distant, filled a void within her that she hadn't known existed. One evening, as the moon cast its silvery light across the mansion's sprawling gardens, Amara found herself once again in the garden. She had just finished her chores for the day and was taking a rare moment for herself. The air was cool, and the flowers in the garden bloomed brightly, their sweet fragrance filling the night air. She closed her eyes, letting the quiet peace of the moment wash over her. Amara. She turned around, startled to see Adebayo standing just a few feet away. His presence was commanding, even in the stillness of the night. His dark eyes, usually filled with calculation, were softer now, more contemplative. "You shouldn't be out here alone at night," he said, his voice a low murmur. Amara gave him a small smile, though it was laced with sadness. "I find peace here. I can think clearly." Adebayo stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. "You've been here for months now, and yet I feel like I know so little about you. You've never asked for anything, never complained. Why?" Amara's smile faded, and she lowered her gaze to the ground. "Because I don't have the right to complain. I don't have the right to ask for anything." She paused, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm here because of my parents' debts. I was sold to you, and I'll never forget that." There was a silence between them, thick and heavy, as Adebayo absorbed her words. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He had never thought about her situation in such stark terms before. He had given her a job, a place to stay, and had settled her parents' debts. But had he ever truly considered how she might feel? "I never wanted to make you feel like a prisoner," Adebayo said quietly. I thought I was helping you." Amara met his gaze then, her eyes searching his face for sincerity. "I know you didn't, but sometimes people don't see the consequences of their actions until it's too late." Adebayo's heart clenched at her words. He had spent so many years focused on his wealth, his business, and his power that he had lost sight of what truly mattered. Amara had reminded him of something he had long forgotten: human connection. His own loneliness, buried beneath years of success, now felt unbearable in the face of her quiet strength. For the first time, he found himself unsure of what to do, how to act around her. The attraction he felt for Amara, which he had buried deep inside himself, was beginning to surface. But he still had his reservations. He was a man of control, a man who prided himself on never letting emotions cloud his judgment. Yet, Amara had a way of breaking through that control with nothing more than a few simple words. The silence between them stretched on, both of them caught in their own thoughts, unsure of how to proceed. "I'm sorry," Adebayo finally said, breaking the silence. "I didn't mean to cause you any pain." Amara looked up at him, her expression softening. "I know you didn't, and I'm sorry too. I shouldn't have said those things. It's just hard sometimes. I didn't ask for this life. I didn't choose it." Adebayo nodded, his heart aching for her. He could see the pain in her eyes, and it unsettled him. She had been forced into this life, and yet she carried herself with such dignity, as if she had chosen this path. He couldn't help but admire her strength. "Would you like to take a walk with me?" he asked, his voice gentle. Amara hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I'd like that." And so the two of them walked side by side through the garden, their steps slow, their conversation light. For the first time, Amara felt like she was more than just a maid in a billionaire's house. She was a person, someone whose thoughts and feelings mattered. But little did she know, as they walked beneath the stars, that her relationship with Adebayo was about to change forever. The tension between them, the attraction that had been quietly simmering for months, was beginning to bubble to the surface. And in the days that followed, the unspoken bond between them would only grow stronger. As the days turned into weeks, the connection between Amara and Adebayo grew undeniable. Their conversations became more frequent, more personal. What started as simple exchanges about chores or the weather slowly transformed into moments of shared vulnerability. Adebayo, who had once seen her only as a servant, now saw her as an equal, someone with dreams, with pain, with strength. Amara, too, found herself trusting him more, seeing beyond the surface to the man who had carried his own burdens silently for so many years. But Amara still carried the weight of her parents' debt. She still lived in a mansion that was not her own, serving a man she never chose, though she had begun to feel something deeper for Adebayo. She couldn't let go of the fact that her life had been bought. That knowledge kept a wall around her heart, a barrier she was not ready to cross. Then, one evening, everything changed. Adebayo, after weeks of internal struggle, could no longer keep his feelings hidden. He found her in the garden, where they had shared so many quiet moments before. The moonlight bathed the world in a soft glow, and the air was filled with a scent of blooming jasmine. "Adebayo," Amara said, her voice laced with hesitation as she looked up at him. "Is there something you want to tell me?" He took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest. The words that had been trapped inside him for so long were now at the tip of his tongue. "Amara," he began, his voice low but steady. "I've spent so long hiding from my own feelings. But the truth is, I can't pretend anymore. I care about you more than I ever thought was possible." Amara's heart skipped a beat. She had known deep down that there was something between them. But hearing him say it out loud took her breath away. "Adebayo, you don't have to say that," she whispered, though the tears in her eyes betrayed her. "I'm just a maid. I'm nothing like the women you're used to." He stepped closer, his voice firm yet gentle. "You are not just a maid. You are everything. You are strong, beautiful, kind. You have a heart that's bigger than anything I've ever known, and I want you by my side. Not because of what you've done for me, but because of who you are." Amara's breath caught in her throat, and she felt the walls around her heart begin to crumble. She had spent so long thinking she was unworthy of love, that she was nothing more than a pawn in her parents' debts. But here was Adebayo, offering her everything, offering her love, offering her freedom. "But what about my parents?" Amara whispered, the old fears still lingering. "What about my debt? What about this life I was forced into?" Adebayo's eyes softened. "Amara, you don't owe me anything. You've paid your debt with your time and your hard work. But you don't need to keep paying it. You deserve to live a life of your own. A life where you're loved, cherished, and respected." and I promise you, I will never let you feel like you're trapped again. A tear slid down Amara's cheek as she stepped forward, her heart swelling with emotions she had never allowed herself to feel before. I don't know how to believe in this, she said quietly. I've spent so long believing that love is something I'll never have. But if you truly mean this, I do, he said, taking her hands in his. I do. And in that moment, Amara knew that Adebayo was the man she had been waiting for. Someone who saw her for who she truly was, not for her circumstances. Someone who was willing to stand beside her, no matter the cost. In the weeks that followed, Adebayo took swift action. He bought out her parents' debts, ensuring they were free from the financial burden that had forced Amara into this life. He offered her an opportunity to live with him, not as a servant, but as his partner. He made it clear that he wanted her in his life, not for what she could do for him, but because of everything she was. As the months went by, Amara's life transformed. No longer a maid in a billionaire's mansion, she became a woman with a future that was hers to choose. She worked alongside Adebayo, helping him with his businesses, finding her own passion in the world of philanthropy and social work, using her experiences to help others who had been in her shoes. Together they traveled, built, and created a life filled with love, mutual respect, and understanding. The mansion, once a place of her servitude, became their home, a home where she was not just his equal, but his love, his partner, and the woman he cherished above all else. Adebayo never forgot the way Amara had stolen his heart, just as he had stolen hers in the most unexpected way. They had both been bound by circumstances, but they had broken free from those chains together. And in the end, it was love, true unconditional love, that had set them both free.